Welcome back to the show. Today, we have a very special guest, multi-platinum recording artist Ashanti. Ashanti has been in the music industry for over 20 years, with hit songs like Foolish, Happy, and Rain on Me. But today, she's here to open up about a deeply personal experience that she's never spoken about publicly before, the difficult and traumatic birth of her first child. Ashanti, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us. Ashanti, thank you for having me. This isn't easy for me to talk about, but I feel like it's important to share, especially for other women who may be going through similar experiences. We really appreciate your vulnerability in discussing this. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your pregnancy and the time leading up to the birth, Ashanti? Well, I found out I was pregnant in 2018, and to be honest, I was completely overwhelmed. I was in the middle of my biggest tour yet, performing almost every night. And on top of that, I was just trying to wrap my head around becoming a first-time mom. It was a lot to take in. The pregnancy itself was pretty smooth for the first several months. But then around 7 months, I started having some complications. I was retaining a lot of fluid, my blood pressure was elevated, and I was just feeling really uncomfortable all the time. My doctors were monitoring me closely, but they assured me that as long as the baby and I were healthy, we could try to go as close to my due date as possible before inducing labor. And what happened when it came time for you to deliver the baby? Ashanti, that's when everything took a really scary turn. When I went in to be induced at 39 weeks, the labor was incredibly difficult and painful from the start. I was in active labor for over 24 hours, and my baby's heart rate kept dropping dangerously low. The doctors kept having to intervene to try to stabilize things. I'll never forget the moment when the doctor came in and told me that they were going to have to do an emergency C-section. I was so scared, not just for myself, but for my baby. I didn't know if we were both going to make it. That must have been absolutely terrifying. I can't even imagine how you must have felt in that moment. Ashanti, it was the most frightening experience of my life. When they finally got the baby out, he wasn't breathing on his own. They had to resuscitate him right there in the operating room. I just remember lying there, completely helpless, watching the medical team work frantically to save my son's life. I'm so sorry, I get emotional even thinking about it. It was the most helpless, traumatic thing I've ever been through. Don't apologize, please. I can't imagine how incredibly difficult that must have been. You're being so brave to share this. Ashanti, after they got him breathing, they had to keep him in the NICU for over a week. I wasn't even able to hold him for the first few days. It was absolute torture, not being able to comfort my own baby. And the recovery from the C-section was so much harder than I ever expected. I was in so much pain, both physically and emotionally. I just felt like I had failed as a mother, you know? Like my body had let me down. That must have been an incredibly heavy burden to carry. Have you been able to heal from that trauma, both physically and mentally? Ashanti, it's been a long road, but I'm finally in a better place now. The physical recovery was grueling, but I eventually healed up. And with the support of my family and my doctors, I was able to work through a lot of the emotional trauma as well. I think the most important thing was just being kind to myself and not beating myself up. I had to remind myself that I didn't do anything wrong, and that my body was doing the best it could to bring my son into the world safely. It's still hard sometimes, but I'm so grateful that we both made it through. That's such an important perspective. And I'm sure your story will resonate with so many other women who have been through similar experiences. What would you say to other moms out there who may be going through something similar? Ashanti, I would just tell them that they're not alone. Childbirth complications and trauma are so much more common than people realize. And it's okay to feel scared, or angry, or even guilty. But the most important thing is to be gentle with yourself, and to reach out for the support you need, whether that's from your doctors, your loved ones, or even online communities of other moms. What I've learned is that there's no right way to have a baby or to be a mom. Every experience is different, and every woman's body is different. The most important thing is that you and your baby are safe and healthy, no matter how you get there. I'm just so grateful that my son and I made it through, and I'm honored to be able to share our story in the hopes that it might help other women going through similar struggles. That's such an important message. Thank you again, Ashanti, for your courage in opening up about this and for sharing your story with us today. I know it can't have been easy, but I'm sure it will make a real difference for so many people. Ashanti, thank you. I really appreciate you having me, and for giving me the platform to talk about this. It means the world to me.